Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Indie Pop Girl, the podcast for music chat, new releases, hidden gems, and nostalgic deep dives. I am back, and for this week we are going to briefly pause the Indie Classic series, and I'm bringing you another new release review. I promised more Mitski, so for this week I will be reviewing her new record, Nothing's About to Happen to Me. Nothing's About to Happen to Me is the 8th studio album by singer-songwriter Mitski and was released on the 27th of February 2026 through Dead Oceans. The record was produced by her longtime collaborator Patrick Hyland, and she recorded the tracks with her touring live band. The orchestra was arranged and conducted by Drew Erickson. Drew Erickson also worked extensively with Lana Del Rey, particularly on her Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard record, so that lush orchestral touch will feel familiar. Sonically, Mitski continues with the country folk of her previous record, The Land is Inhospitable and So Are We. She incorporates this with her heavy guitar sound that she explored on Bury Me at Makeout Creek and Puberty 2 records. You'd think that blending country folk, heavy guitar and orchestral arrangements wouldn't quite work. And honestly, I think that tension is intentional. Mitski explained in the press release that the album's narrative is about a reclusive woman in an unkempt house, and the sonics displayed throughout the record perfectly match that chaotic energy of the main character. The lead single, Where's My Phone, was released back in January, and I made the decision not to listen to it, as I like to save singles for the whole album experience. The record clocks in just under 35 minutes, and with 11 tracks, Mitski moves away from the TikTok lengths that she usually delivers on her records. This time, the songs feel more expansive, and the instrumentals have opportunity to fully breathe. I won't be covering in this episode how I discovered Mitski, so if you are curious and want to know more, please check out my previous episode covering the Be the Cowboy record from last week. I go into detail how I became a fan and how I discovered Mitski, so please give that a listen after this episode is finished. Now, I will be honest, Mitski's previous record just didn't click with me fully. I respect the project and there are moments on it that I really enjoy, but as a whole it didn't quite land for me, unfortunately. It's a lovely sounding record and I kept waiting for something to grab me emotionally, and it just never quite did. However, I am always excited for a new Mitski project. She always delivers quality, and it doesn't matter if a body of work clicks or not. You can't like everything, and that's okay. So I'm glad that I went into this record with an open mind and not hearing anything prior to me receiving a copy of the vinyl. I received my copy a day early from HMV in the UK, and it was such a nice surprise when it arrived. So, going into Nothing's About to Happen to Me, I was curious, would this be the record that pulled me back in completely? As I've mentioned in previous episodes, I will not be playing clips of the songs, so if you are curious, then please support the artists I cover by streaming, downloading, or buying physical copies. Thank you. Track 1, In a Lake. The opening track, In a Lake, is a really strong introduction sonically. There's a lot going on in the mix. Accordion, strings, horns, banjo, but it never feels overwhelming. Mitski's vocal sits beautifully over everything, and I really appreciate the message of this song that Mitski would never live in a small town, as she confirms to the listener that she's made too many mistakes. You know that gossip and rumours spread like wildfire in those situations, and instead, Mitski is opting to find the comfort and healing in a lake to possibly heal from any past trauma and pain. It slowly builds and then unravels into this more chaotic ending, which feels very in line with her style of her earlier work, controlled but slightly unhinged. It's such a strong opener for the record, and on my first listen got me really intrigued for the rest of the tracks. Track 2, Where's My Phone? Where's My Phone leads much more into that grungier side of Mitski. It's guitar driven, a bit rough around the edges, and the drums really push it forward. Lyrically, it's pretty brutal, but also weirdly relatable. I think a lot of people will be able to connect with the message of this song. We're all guilty of spending far too much time on our phone, doom scrolling, and it can feel overwhelming at times. It could be a form of escapism or just habit. I think we have all had that sinking feeling of misplacing our phone, that sense of dread and anxiety it brings. Mitski taps into the anxiety, and the instrumental is perfect here as it really drives the message forward. And I love the little nod to Nobody in verse 1. Mitski sings, I keep thinking, surely somebody will save me. At every turn, I learn that no one will. God damn. It's interesting that the fuck is censored in the track. A creative decision, I am sure, but it was surprising when I played the vinyl for the first time. I wasn't really expecting it. Track 3, Cats. So this track slows things down a little bit and leans more into those country influences that run through the record. Vocally, Mitski sounds really clear here. It's quite a clean, stripped back moment. This is one I'm still sitting with though. It didn't really grab me on first listen, but I don't think it's meant to. It feels like the kind of track that might reveal itself over time. A lot of Mitski tracks, you have to stay patient. I talked about in my Be the Cowboy episode that I was struggling with A Horse Named Cold Air, but I started to focus on Mitski's vocal performance for it to click, and that might be the key with Cats. The instrumental is very pleasant and soothing, but nothing really stuck out to me melody wise. And that's okay. Sometimes you really can't force it. I do appreciate the message behind the song, and I love the lines in the chorus. In the meantime, rescues at my side. Our two cats, both asleep by me tonight, is beautiful. Track 4, If I Leave. This track feels much more straightforward in its approach. The drums are strong and direct, and the instrumentation is relatively stripped back. Lyrically, Mitski sings about her struggles with mental health and having the faith and belief in her partner who can understand and support her through the darkness. It's so relatable. In verse 1, she tells us that absolutely no one knows, even her own family. And sometimes when you are struggling, you don't want people to find out. You put on a brave face for other people and situations, But when you are all alone with your loved one, you fall apart. It's quite heartbreaking, and I love Mitski's honesty. The bridge, especially, is Mitski can't imagine never living a life without darkness. It actually reminded me of Bury Me at Makeout Creek, that slightly raw, no frills energy. There's less ornamentation here, and that simplicity works in its favour. This is one of the moments where the record feels more immediate and does set up the bleakness of the next track perfectly. Track 5, Dead Women. So, this track, I would say, is one of the darker moments on the record. Lyrically, Mitski really doesn't hold back here. It is quite bleak in places. Mitski delivers the brutal line, "While I dream of flying, stab me 27 times," which I thought of the 27 Club immediately. And then I realised that this record was released on the 27th of February. I just loved the clever connection there. Mitski also touches on the objectification that women often experience and doesn't hold back with the line, saying she gave her life so we could have her in our dreams. She gave her life so we could fuck her as we please. There is a lot going on in this track, and it's something that you wouldn't be able to fully capture in the first listen. She brings her wordless choruses in this track, and it's one of Mitski's strengths as a songwriter. There is a lot on this record and in Dead Women, and it reminded me of Blue Light from Be the Cowboy. Even though the choruses or whatever Mitski chooses to express herself in the track, and there's no lyrics, but at the same time, she is saying so much. I don't know how she does it. It could be in the way that she delivers the wordless choruses or the wordless lyrics. It's a difficult art to pull off, and Mitski pulls that off with so much ease, and it's really effective on this record. What I really like though is the contrast. The instrumentation is actually really pretty. There are these soft strings running through it, and that sits against some really heavy subject matter. There is also some really nice synths that come in towards the outro, which add a bit of texture. This is definitely one of the highlights on the record for me, and this is one of the tracks that really stood out to me on first listen. And I think I was looking for more moments like this across the album overall. Track 6, Instead of Here. This track leans back into those country influences that run throughout the album. Lyrically, Mitski is still in quite a bleak space, and she really doesn't shy away from that on this record. What really stood out to me here though is the piano. It really elevates the track and adds some emotional weight. This is another one I think I need more time with. It didn't fully land for me straight away, but there's something in it that feels like it could grow. Track 7, I'll Change for You. I'll Change for You is easily my favourite track on the entire record. It has this warm, almost 70s inspired sound, and it really suits Mitski's voice. It actually reminded me a bit of Charm by Clairo, that same soft, smooth atmosphere. It's got such a beautiful melody that really gets in your head, and on repeated listens it gave me strong Karen Carpenter Wise Blood vibes, and it's probably why I love it so much. Her vocal performance here is incredible. She really pours everything into it. And honestly, this might be one of my favourite Mitski vocal performances ever. The production is so clean as well. Patrick Hyland does a great job here. And honestly, I would love to hear Mitski explore this 1970s sound more in the future because it really works for her. I know we are only in March, but I will say it now. This track is definitely an SOTY contender. Track 8, Rules. Now, I'll be honest with you guys, Rules is the one track on the album that just doesn't work for me. I've given it quite a few listens now, and it leans much more heavily into that country sound, which personally isn't something I connect with as much. I'm also not completely sold on how the horns are used here. They didn't quite land for me, and it's just too much for my personal taste. That said, I do like elements of the song. The organ and the drumming are nice, but overall, this is the one track I find myself not coming back to. I'm sorry. And I think this might be one of those moments where the album's overall direction just doesn't quite align with my taste. And this is why her previous record didn't fully click with me, but that's okay. Sometimes it can take months or even years, and patience is really key, especially with an artist like Mitski. Track 9, That White Cat. So this is more like it for me. The drumming here is really strong. It has that driving, almost galloping feel, and it actually leans more towards Mitski's earlier work. And vocally, she does something a bit different here, which I really like. There's something quite haunting about it, and it honestly reminded me a bit of Susie and the Banshees, that slightly dark, unhinged energy. I didn't realise right away, it was only through repeated listens, that Mitski talks about death quite a bit on this record. I know she is no stranger on the subject of death, but despite some lovely instrumental arrangements, this is a very dark record in places. I would love it if Mitski also explored this dark, almost gothic vibe in the future because this track was an instant highlight for me. Track 10, Karan's Obol. This track sits somewhere in the middle for me. Vocally, Mitski sounds great, and there are some really nice moments here. It leans quite heavily into that country sound again, and while the strings are lovely, I do feel like instrumentally it's starting to sound quite similar to what we've already heard on the record. The background vocals do lift it a bit, but the melody didn't really stick with me at all. At this point in the album, I do start to feel that some of the tracks blur together just ever so slightly. I don't dislike it though. This feels like another one I'd need to spend more time with. It's not quite stuck with me on repeated listens compared to some of the other tracks on the record, but I will be returning to this track within the context of the album in the future. Track 11, Lightning. Lightning is a really strong closer for the record. I love the instrumentation here. Everything feels clean and well produced. Mitski's vocal is really captivating, and the track builds nicely towards this more explosive, slightly chaotic moment, and then it pulls itself back. The guitar work is really nice as well, but I do feel like the track ends quite abruptly. As a closing track, I was expecting a bit more of an outro, something that really lets the album breathe and land properly. Instead, it kind of just stops, and you're left thinking, is that it? I think that could have been explored a bit more to give the record a more satisfying ending, but that's just my take on it on my initial listen. But then, as I sat with this record more and started to think about the lyrics and themes, I was thinking that the ending actually makes sense. Mitski closes the record with the lines, "I can hear the song of my death, singing for the lightning to come, calling to the thunder, polo." This is a record that will fully reveal itself over time and not something you can fully decide after a couple of days. Yes, there are a few moments in the record that I don't fully align with or sonically just isn't to my taste, but this is a dark, complex album from Mitski which explores many themes, and it will be a record that I am still fully digesting. I've only been sitting with this record since last Thursday, and with an artist like Mitski, you don't always get everything straight away. Some of her work takes time to fully reveal itself. Laurel Hell is a good example of that for me. When it first came out, there were tracks I didn't connect with, but over time, I've grown to really love them. So I do think that this record might be more of a slow burner. It's not as immediate as records like Puberty 2 or Be the Cowboy, but there are still some really strong moments here. The lyricism is still top notch, even if some of the instrumental choices didn't quite work for me. And ultimately, that comes down to personal taste. I'm not naturally drawn to country influences or the heavy use of horns, so this isn't a criticism of the album itself. You can't connect with everything and you really can't force it, and like I said before, that's completely okay. You just have to embrace and accept it. As I said, I am still fully digesting this record, so I'm going to let this record breathe and come back to it over the next few months. And who knows, by the end of the year, I might have a very different perspective on it. You'll have to stay tuned. But I would love to know your thoughts on the new Mitski record. What tracks are your favourite? And are there any tracks you didn't connect with? I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you've enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could follow, like, or share, as it helps other music lovers discover my podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Indie Pop Girl podcast. I'm posting full episodes, shorts, and little teasers over there, so there's always something new to watch. Let me know in the comments if you love Mitski and if you've been spinning this record recently. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads at the Indie Pop Girl and on TikTok at the Indie Pop Girl podcast. And if you want to dive even deeper, there's a public Spotify playlist called Favourite Tracks from Podcast Episodes, where I add some of my top picks from each record I cover. It's updated as new episodes drop, so you might just find your next obsession. I'll be back very soon, and I'll be continuing with the Indie Classic series. I will be discussing a record from 2014, which was a complete sonic departure for this Welsh band. I can't wait to talk about this record, as it is one of my favourites from them, so stay tuned. Until then, I'm Rachel, the Indie Pop Girl. Thanks for listening, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.